This is Michael Popok. Look at the glasses. Look at the time. It's time for Legal AF After Dark. George Santos, remember him? Part of the MAGA movement, got into the House and got there on fraudulent grounds. Well, he's pled guilty to all the felony counts against him for lying, for stealing, credit card fraud, identity theft, and illegal use of campaign funds, you name it. And he's going away for a long, long time on a mandatory minimum sentence that his lawyers had to agree to, or the prosecutors weren't going to let him make a plea deal. We break it all down for you and explain it on Legal AF After Dark. Take a listen.
Let's show you George Santos crying right now. The George Santos saga is we pretty much conclude that book at this point officially. And I'm debating whether or not we even talk about Santos or not on a show like this. But, we've covered, we were one of the first people who were looking at those FEC filings. I'm not sure if the legal AFers remember it. Before people were even talking about criminal charges, Michael Popok and I were going through but go back 2 years ago, we were going line by line through those FEC filings, and we were saying, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't. Here's the treasurer leaving. We gave the roadmap of the prosecution. Now, the DOJ probably figured out the roadmap on their own, but the early legal AFers may remember that we called every step of this and in very careful detail. So that's why I want to bring it up as well. Close that chapter. I'll be brief because George Santos doesn't deserve all that much of our time, but I think it's worthwhile on this Saturday that we all collectively in this legal AF community watch him cry. Play this clip.
I'm taking responsibility because I have to. There's no other way around it. To my family, friends, and supporters, and the people of New York's 3rd Congressional District, I offer my deepest apologies. It has been the proudest achievement of my life to represent you, and I believe I did so to the best of my abilities. But you also trusted me to represent you with honor and to uphold the values that are essential to our democracy. And in that regard, I failed you. I know that my actions have caused disappointment, frustration, and a loss of faith in me, and for that, I'm truly sorry. I also want to acknowledge the many people who have stood by me during this difficult time, my family, friends, and legal team. Your support has been a source of strength, and I am determined to repay your faith in me by becoming a better person. Moving forward, I am dedicated to making amends for the wrongs I have committed. I understand that there are legal consequences for my actions, and I accept them fully. This plea is not just an admission of guilt. It's an acknowledgement that I need to be held accountable, like any other American that breaks the law. I hope that by facing these consequences head on, I can begin to demonstrate my commitment to change and to earning your forgiveness. I do not ask for forgiveness, as I know that must be earned through actions, not words. I want to be a part of restoring the integrity that I helped diminish, and I will work tirelessly to regain the trust of those I have let down. As I move forward, I am committed to living a life that reflects the values I should have upheld all along. And truth and integrity. I know that rebuilding.
So I want to say this, though, before turning it over to you. Okay. Let me just give some data points.
I almost poked my eyes out during that, but go ahead.
He pled guilty to 2 federal counts, wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. There's a 2-year mandatory minimum, but the judge estimated that the sentencing range would likely be between 6 and 8 years. So Santos is learning at that moment before he sheds those crocodile tears or tears or real tears, whatever you think that is, that he's going to jail, not for 6 months, that he could be doing about 8, and he's going to serve it. That's one of the things. He's not Trump. He's not, like these other figures in Trump's world who go MAGA and do these crimes, they go to jail. Trump needs to be treated like them. This guy's going to go behind bars for 6 to 8 years. And I know he may have made that money on Gab or whatever those apps are where, people would have him read ridiculous things, but he's going to go to jail. But I will say this before turning it over to you, Popok. What he did say there, though, are it was at least refreshing to hear someone in a MAGA world say words like that. Now, he's a fraud in everything he does. Do I believe his words are genuine? Absolutely not. Actions speak far louder than words, and his actions show that he lies about everything. But at least those words are things that you and I are used to seeing when it comes to federal sentencing.
Well, a couple of observations. Thanks. It was going long. I almost wrote on our chain. I'm about to poke my eyes out with this. I like the fact that we don't leave loose ends on legal AF. We followed this story, as you said, from the very beginning. We didn't break the story, but we did the deep dive of the analysis like no other channel, I believe, out there. And we need to follow it to its logical conclusion, which we always knew was coming. The logical conclusion, once his partner, his treasurer, and those around him all either pled guilty or testified against him and flipped on him, we knew this was coming, no matter his bravado. Right up, I mean, they had to drag him out of the house. Let's not forget. And the amount of resources that the Eastern District of New York, the prosecutor's office here, and Breon Peace had to expend of our taxpayer dollars. That tearful goodbye we should have been reporting on that 8 months ago. But he pled not guilty again. The reason that the prosecutors were not going to let him off the hook unless he agreed to a mandatory minimum to go to jail. And they basically pled guilty to lots of different things, comes down to those two felonies, is because they had him dead to rights when it came to the evidence. Just shows you our criminal justice system at its finest. And he's not the only one that ends up, as to touch on something you just alluded to, Ben. He's not the only one that ends up dissolved in tears in a blubbery state at the moment when he meets his maker, or in this case, about to be sentenced by a federal judge. Most, if not all, of the MAGA Jan 6 insurrectionists, except for the diehard true believers who are still flashing white supremacy signs at their sentencing, or their families are holding press conferences on the courthouse steps to still talk about MAGA conspiracies. The vast majority of them, the followers of Donald Trump, all break down into tears in front of their family before they get carted off by the Federal Bureau of Prisons and the Marshal's office. And you're right. It is an irony that their fearless leader is able to use every trick in the book and every tactic at his disposal, including basically using the United States Supreme Court as his to do his bidding and avoid jail time to date. Although we're going to see what happens when you and I finally get to talk about the September 18th sentencing by Judge Rashan related to things that happened in New York. But the rest of he doesn't go to jail, but the rest of them all do. Bannon is in, Navarro in and now out, and all the rest of the Jan 6 insurrectionists that we're going to talk about today. And yet Donald Trump continues to go to sleep, in a house with a golden escalator, and put his head on some feathered bed, and enjoy freedom for now, and run for president. And that is the reality. And I'm hoping that what just happened to Santos and these other Jan 6 people we're going to talk about are going to be lessons for people. I don't want another Jan 6 in 2025, because Kamala Harris is going to win. And if it's hopefully not a close election, but if it's anywhere close to a close election, you're going to see Donald Trump do exactly what he did before: declare victory when the ballots are opened and not when all the votes are counted, and claim fraud in the week leading in, and then get all of his crazies back attacking the Capitol. And but this time we'll be prepared for that, hopefully, at terms of Joe Biden will be the president, will be responsible for the National Guard and for everything else to protect our cradle of our democracy. But yeah, and the one last thing, Santos didn't have to give that speech, for those that may be wondering. That's not a requirement of his plea deal, that he stand on the steps of the courthouse and give a tearful goodbye. That's just what he's done. And I want to know what the over-under is on him running a scam inside of the jail once he's there. I think it's 6 months. I don't trust. George Santos has been a scammer in Brazil. He's been a scammer here. He scammed Holocaust survivors. He scammed 9/11 survivors. He scammed his way all through his entire time, kicking and screaming, staying in Congress in order. And MAGA made their devil's bargain to keep him because they needed every vote they needed. I don't even know why. They didn't accomplish anything as a Congress other than these ridiculous impeachment proceedings and reports. But they wanted him till the bitter end. And that's where we're at.
Well, we had to cover Santos there purely because we can close that chapter. When he officially gets sentenced, we'll put it as a footnote in one of our episodes just to give you the amount of years he's going to jail for. But when we get back, I wanted to talk about Trump sentencing coming up September 18th. I want to talk about Trump appealing the New York civil fraud case. And I want to talk about what the DOJ is doing by, yes, they are dismissing and recharging some of the obstruction of official proceeding cases. But by and large, they're just, I think their plan is to do these superseding indictments and just make clearer in the indictments that there is a causal nexus, a connection between the insurrectionist and the documents. So where that hasn't been specifically pled in the indictment, just add additional facts to show that what the individual was trying to do was destroy the documents, i.e. the certifications themselves, the electoral certificates.
Welcome back. Legal AF After Dark is a version of the Legal AF podcast. We do it every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We sit at the intersection of law and politics. We don't blow smoke or sunshine. We're practicing lawyers telling you what we think with educated guesses from years, 100 years collective experience in the courtrooms and courthouses that we talk about every week. Full curated version, about an hour long, Wednesday, Saturdays. Join us here on the MeidasTouch Network on this YouTube channel. You can watch us make the actual podcast and you can live chat with us at the time. Or you can pick us up on audio podcast platforms of your choice. Until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know, and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.